Good morning, or good afternoon, whenever you're watching this. So, I'm excited today. I have a busy but fun day. And before we dive into the topic today, which is the relationship between self worth and this lovely, trendy concept of the soft life, um, I am excited to talk about this, but a little nervous at the same time, too, because it's very opinionated. But before we get there, because I'm gonna there, but I don't know, I want to share with y'all because this my way of like staying up with y'all, or you guys staying up with me. Just because I spend a lot of my time behind closed doors, talking to people, and I try to bring those conversations to a place where y'all can benefit from them, listen to them. Everything. Not everyone needs to go to therapy, but everyone can benefit from therapy. And really, sometimes it's just observing and getting to be exposed to the opinions and perspectives of other people that I feel like is what I'm really trying to share with y'all. So before we get there, though, speaking of perspective, one of the fun things I'm doing today, I've got 2 photo shoots today. I'm merging this whole model life, which is really a hobby, but it's more fun for me right now because it gets me out from behind this lens, behind the virtual closed doors of my therapy sessions and coaching sessions, and it gets me into like my life. And but perspective is, so if you've watched my other videos, one of the reasons I started modeling is because my dad was a model back in, I don't know, 60s, 70s maybe. He made it into some print commercial shoots up in the Northeast. It's in the family, right? And so part of, if you know my story from other videos, I lost my dad when I was about 16. And me trying out modeling was a way for me to kind of relate to him and just kind of see what it was like. And so one of the shoots I'm doing today is in line with my business and right size perspective ethos, which is the peace model, but we're doing the P shoot, which is for perspective. And so I'm going to be recreating a shoot that he did back in his portfolio and making it a staple piece in mine. So I'm really excited about that. I'm not really sure that it fully relates to the topic today. I'm sure I could figure out some way to relate it. It's based on perception and all that. But I guess I can more relate it to self-worth. If self-worth is a really tricky topic to help people with. Not only discuss, I actually think it's easier to talk about than it is to actually have self-worth in a lot of ways. It is something I personally relate to, given kind of, here's the relatability here, is that, when you lose a parent, that is like such a different experience in life to lose a parent. And I do think some regard of like when and timing and age really makes a difference, just because of psychosocial development and the interpersonal skills that come from having a parent that, whether they're a healthy parent or not, having any parent that mirrors a direction in life or mirrors and models a capability. There's a huge component when it comes to self-worth, is having that. And so for me personally, given my personality, I was very shy and introverted when I was young, and my dad was a very charismatic, extroverted person. And so, I had to, for me, venturing into modeling was also trying to figure out, how do I bring, every introvert has an extroverted side. You just have to be around the right people. Or if you're not around the right people, being able to be yourself intentionally. And so because my life, just happened for a long time, because my brain, between the stress of growing up a very shy child, consuming everyone, being a feeler, I've always been a feeler. I feel emotions, very, large, big emotions. And it worked against me for a long time. That severely impacted this concept of self-worth. And partly because I didn't have, I had female models. I had women who are very strong and independent, but because they had to be. I had them modeling certain traits and characteristics for me, but I didn't necessarily have some of the balance of having a father figure to get me through different stages of my development past. I mean, 16 is just, I mean, you're in an adolescent stage and right on the verge of like young adulthood at that point. And, you know, it's fair game these days. So I really wanted to talk about this, how it merges with why people are attracted to this concept of the soft life. And because I'm trust me, when I see influencers talk about the soft life, you know, it's alluring. It's enticing. It's also something though that I want to break down as like, what are the pros and cons of for y'all to consider? Because I think a lot of it comes out. So, and I'm also kind of winging this today, so it goes against my first rule of like having a list for my attention deficit brain, but we're going to see how it goes. The first point I really want to make is that the soft life typically comes out of the brain's compensation for being under a state of chronic stress for a long time. Our desire to be in a stress-free or stressless environment and our attainment of that as a concept of self-worth and being able to find peace is usually it's an adaptive coping skill, but it turns maladaptive very quickly. And part of the reasons why, and now before I go any further, I want to disclaimer, right? This is an opinion based off of my clinical observation of a lot of different types of people and their versions of what their soft life is, whether it be hypothetical, something that they have not attained yet, or whether it's an observation of social media, or I usually end up working with people after their quote unquote soft life that is usually a marriage of some sort where someone, and I end up, you know, I've had a few clients, women who had a perception of, you know, a healthy, they thought they were in a healthy marriage until it wasn't so soft anymore, right? And the realities of a relationship and how much work that takes with someone else, let alone with yourself, really starts to be, I think, the bigger question here. So again, this is just my opinion, my thoughts towards what I've observed, and then also my own graduation to what my version of a soft life actually means, given I had to find some balance between my kind of what I call toxic independent woman syndrome, and then also being able to be an independent woman, because that's also very important to me. Just kind of how my life's going right now. You can call me, you know, a single cat lady if you want. I'm going to call me an empowered woman who can handle my business with or without someone helping me, but I do need help. That's good. Okay. So let's go back to my point, which is it is usually an attachment. Like the soft life is almost like a goal for a lot of people who are coming out or honestly recognizing a state of chronic stress. And so this is kind of really starts to lead towards a conversation more about codependency than it does about soft life, right? And what codependency really means is an attention to the things and the worth of ourselves that rely on external things. And usually when it comes to relationships, it is the other person's needs and their worth that prioritizes over our own. So this is more of like a kind of a con if we're not aware of what codependency is really all about. And it's not necessarily a bad thing. Right now, I think mainstream conversations about codependency is that like, oh my gosh, we can't be codependent. It's not da-da-da-da. It's not that that's not going anywhere. But what happened, you have to be aware that sometimes your worth, what makes you feel good about yourself, is dependent on the stability and the balance of another person being okay versus you actually being okay. And that was actually a big issue for me, whereas I was a helping professional, or am a helping professional. I am a feeler. I grew up in a divorced family where I'm like, can we all just get along? And I became this middleman where I was like, so I was ultimately trained, not intentionally by my parents, because they wanted me to be this carefree kid. But because I am who I am, became kind of chronically worried about how other people felt. And it wasn't necessarily about me, but it was taking away from my ability to actually address my needs. And when we break down what our needs are, it's not just to feel like pretty. It's not to feel valuable. Sometimes our needs really do rely on us being uncomfortable. So this kind of, and I feel like there's gonna be a longer list of cons than there is pros. Let me do a pro before. A con would be that our brains are not trained to understand our needs from an emotional standpoint, from a physical standpoint, from a safety standpoint, when we're naturally reliant from birth on someone else. So why I think everyone can benefit from therapy, or at least a conversation about it, is realizing that we're all trained to be attentive to usually other people's needs more than our own, because that's what happens in child rearing. Even if it's a crappy and traumatic childhood, more than likely we are trained to be attentive to someone else's stability more than creating stability and safety for ourselves. And so I feel like when we talk about the soft life, it's just kind of marketed from a capitalistic standpoint of like, get the lashes done, get the nails done, have the hair laid, have the clothes right. And I see it run rampant in the modeling community that it's like everything is externally pleasure, and like you have to be subjected to a lot of and just exposure of do what other people want you to do because that's the role. Now, I'm not trying to deconstruct the modeling industry. I actually really like it. But if you are not prepared to understand the dynamic and power dynamic of being at the beck and call for a designer or for a boss or for like, that is how our society works. But we're not teaching financial literacy in school, but we're not teaching the natural emotional literacy that's really needed to be able to understand how to regulate ourselves once we get into adulthood. Then that's, sometimes there's going to be negative experiences in life. There's going to be deaths and losses. And some of those can be good losses, some of them can be bad. But when you train your brain to think that the soft life, you just need to protect yourself from all of that, or you're going to be fine, you are kind of missing the boat on how do you make sure that your self-worth is secure, whether someone else is around you or not. And of course, there's always therapists will be here to help you realize that as a fail-safe. But then honestly, we're still running into a lot of stigmas about why people don't even want to talk to a therapist, whether it be in a crisis moment or whether it be at all, because of, right? But I feel like, this soft life, we got to be really careful. And I'm going to be very careful and pretty much more intentional. I'm not going to try to, restrict myself because I can't control the perceptions of other people. I'm just going to try to model, a balance of being an independent woman that takes care of myself, my emotional needs. And this, I will stand on this. I don't know what these young people say. I'd be like, someone help me out. I stand on the fact that regardless of whatever life that you choose, your emotional needs are 100% your responsibility. No partner, no man, no woman, can make you feel any way or any different from how you understand your own emotions. When I do couples counseling, specifically with people, like I usually, since I have the addictions wheelhouse, I tend to work with the partners of a recovering person often, and a lot of the times they are one of the culprits and contributions. Thank you. I stand 10 toes down, Elton. They're one of the biggest contributors to a toxic codependency because they usually grew up with like a parent that is like their partner or their spouse, and lack of predictability becomes honestly a codependence addiction. Now, when you get a person who is the drug user or the just the substance user or, whatever, honestly, you see this a lot in entrepreneurship too, where they are operating out of a codependent dynamic that becomes addictive. And because I deal with this too, is a lot of people say I work for myself, and I was like, no, I don't. I work for my clients. If they don't want to see me, I don't get paid. So it's like, yeah, I could look like I have free reign of my time and everything, but I have to work for them, and making them a degree of satisfied is part of my job. So I teeter on this codependent dynamic often, and this is the transformation that you've seen in my life is me slowly trying to rebalance how, even with my clients, that I'm not going to just people please with my clients. I'm going to tell you and be affirmative to a truth that allows you to be free from a truth that keeps you sick. That's not always received very well. And so a lot of the tips and the tricks that I teach people in my coaching is really about how to navigate and talk to people's emotions and their egos to be able to, you're not getting rid of your ego. It's that you have a balance, you have a relationship with your own emotions as well as yourself and your own experiences to be able to know when your ego needs to make a decision and when it needs to fall back. And that's really hard to do. It's no perfect science here. It's what they call psychology a soft science. But, okay, did I get off on a little tangent? Maybe. But I think coming back to it is that our emotional health and our emotional wellness 100% has to be each person's responsibility. I think the portrayal of the soft life underneath what the soft life is a dependency on someone else's stability, making sure that our life is balanced and our emotions are stable. And I might get some heat for this, but I'm going to say it again. Women got some work to do. We are naturally conditioned to be more emotional. We have a hormonal cycle that is not in our control, that men don't necessarily have, although they do have their own hormonal fluctuation. But women have for the longest time been conditioned to be dependent on a man. And this is still fresh, less than 50 years. And we're still seeing it, and we're still romanticizing it in today's culture of being able to find a rich husband or find someone who's going to create stability for us in a monetary sense, but that doesn't necessarily fix the emotional volatility. I see it all the time, and often I see it mostly with very wealthy clients because of the perception that money brings security. Money is not the only thing that brings security. Can it bring some security? Abso-freaking-lutely. But does it bring the only security that we're talking about, generational wealth? No. Generational wealth comes with being able to reduce the trauma that you continuously pass down, and trauma being, a hyper reaction, hopefully my mom doesn't, cut me out the will for saying this, but I had to retrain my mom a little bit. She teeters on this, but she had a very loud, just like whenever I would do something or she saw something fall and like da-da-da. And that to this day, if there's a loud noise, like I am like, whoa, like what happens? And I had to recondition and regulate my nervous system just from one small thing. Was it intentionally trying to mess me up as a person? No. But it was conditioned probably from her parents, because the reason I do what I do is because I have a lineage of codependency and substance use in my family. And I had to look at like, okay, well, when I want kids and I want to create my own family, what kind of parent do I want to be? Those conversations did not happen as intentionally as they're happening today, which there's a lot there. So I'm going to try to stay on topic, but that soft life came with a sacrifice. Yeah. So there's a pro and a con to like, we're looking at a codependency issue and trying to make sure that we, like the same way that you would write out a budget for your household, we have to write out a budget for your emotional health and your emotional wellness to kind of keep in check, where it's like, okay, is this person's reaction, dictating my reaction because of the discomfort that I feel? And I'm not going to go through every aspect of codependency because, to be honest with you, it's quite lengthy. But there is a inventory that I have on my website that goes through the different areas of how codependency can show up. And I highly encourage people. That worksheet alone changed my life. It's really tough. It's a mirror in itself, but to go through each section, I believe there are about 6 or 7 sections. of the different self-worth, self-esteem, interpersonal conflict resolution, and different deviations, like just an inventory, kind of like a little quiz, but to consider, okay, which of these happens for us in a period. I usually tell people to just consider the last 3 to 6 months. Reflect on which ones stand out to you, because if you're going after this concept of like, oh, I just need an environment that allows me to be peaceful, it's not sustainable. It's just not. I'm sorry. Unfortunately right now it's not sustainable from a financial standpoint, because if anything else changes from an economic standpoint, if you do not know how to have an awareness of your own financial budget, and that's just a natural smart thing to do within a marriage, is like some person takes kind of, the effort of like the finances, but then you now have a separateness and not a cohesive conversation with your partner to be able to know, how much does it actually cost for me to feel peaceful, to have my nails done, to have my massages every week, it's expensive. Like, as a person who does all of that, like, consideration, and I did it at a time where I wasn't tallying it up, and now that I'm like, I have to tally it up, and I'm like, ooh, I'm not really sure I want to become dependent on this particular emotional health routine because it makes me feel good. Other than my lashes, that was a game changer for me. I'm not gonna lie, but that's partly why I don't get my eyebrows like tattooed. I fill them in every day. I take the time because it also gives me the time to really connect with myself and be like, okay, well, maybe I just want to be plain faced today. My lashes, the only reason I do this is because if I'm in the gym, between how much I sweat, that's not something I can change. I could technically change it with some Botox, but that's expensive. Tried it, not really willing to continue to invest in that. But I don't want to look like a naked mole rat. I don't. So with me sweating, that's why I get my lashes. So if you can find the value that's past a monetary investment to make yourself feel good, I'd say you're in a better place of compromise and negotiation with your own ego than you are to consider that the soft life is just like, oh, I have to have it to feel good about myself. I see it rampant on TikTok. I mean, I don't even keep TikTok on my personal phone. I do keep it on my work phone because my clients engage with me that way and they send me TikToks, but it's riddled, and it has to be a personal choice to be able to kind of take a look and deconstruct what is really sustainable self-worth. And it's usually not the things that we do to our outside. Now, a good haircut is actually tied directly to self-worth. So I do consider, like, although I can love a good Supercuts, I met my hairstylist at Supercuts. I follow her now because she's grown and developed her business and her craft, that a good haircut and a bad haircut can change your life. So there are certain things that we do that are attached to our self-worth. We just have to know which ones really have the biggest weight for us. Because when I see people, and self-esteem and self-worth, little bit different, but very, very similar. The biggest difference, see, this is where I should have probably prepared this, but I'd say the biggest difference between self-esteem and self-worth is more in a depth of a belief system about yourself, and self-esteem is more based in attributes and values. It's almost kind of, how do I want to portray this? I would say self-esteem are the things that contribute to self-worth. But self-worth, I use this metaphor all the time. Self-worth is your gas tank. The self-esteem are the trips to the gas station that you put the gas in the tank. Now, if you have low self-worth, you have a leak in the system. Part of my role for people is I go in and I kind of poke around and like try to find where the leak is happening. A lot of the times it comes within their own thoughts, but a lot of the time it comes from a toxic belief system that someone else, a parent or sometimes a bully or an SA situation, a domestic violence situation, they have deposited someone else's poor self-worth into their tank. And then ultimately therapy is just that flushing out of the system. But it's more than just doing things that make yourself feel good. It's doing things that challenge the belief system that operates you fundamentally. So that's where this soft life is like, yes, you're going to be like in a very nice chair on the side of the race, and you don't have to sweat and get dirty, and you can watch everyone else do the hard work, but you're literally stuck in that chair. The soft life is being stuck and you can't get up and you can't move. So it's like, yeah, great, but wouldn't you want the ability to be able to walk and run if you needed to? So I think it was what, David Goggins. I love David Goggins' story. If you don't know him, he's a former Navy SEAL, really big on mental fitness. He goes to the extreme because he's former soldiers, but I do really like his motivations. I think he was the one that said we're built to run uphill or walk uphill. This mental illness stuff didn't really start to become an issue until the Industrial Revolution. Kind of technology took over, and our brains still think that we're running from saber-toothed tigers. But the point is that mental resiliency came from running from saber-toothed tigers. We're not running from those things anymore. We need to be able to run. So this now becomes, it's not only a physical health conversation, because that's where movement does come in, but the perception that the soft life is not only just external maintenance, but that it's mindfulness too. It's understanding interpersonal dynamics. It's making sure that you have the conflict resolution skills and not just canceling or going no contact with people at one argument. Now, no contact and canceling absolutely needs to happen if you're in an extremely toxic situation, but to block someone on Facebook because they pissed you off and did something that, yeah, it can be quite atrocious, it really only hurts you in the long run. Temporarily, it can help, and it does have a symbolism to be able to be like, okay, not going to go look for them. But if you're not able to express yourself when that person wants to engage with you, regardless of whether you're heard or listened to, it's not sustainable. So that is one little perception facade from a psychological standpoint as to why the soft life is not something that I promote. I promote being soft, but I do not promote the soft life. Now, given that I'm also, things may change in my life, but I really don't. I look at people. One of my mentors asked me one time, when you're 8 years old, what do you want to be looking at? And I was able to visualize what I wanted to be looking at. And then I started looking back and I'm like, okay, what do I need to do to either be there financially as well as emotionally? I wanted to be somewhere that did cost me money to be, but I wanted to be able to connect and be peaceful in that space, which is what started me working on the inner peace part before just trying to go and attain the outcome. So another point about the soft life is if you go and attain that soft life at 30 years old, what you want to do for the rest of the 50 years? Just be soft? Because look, 50 years, there's a lot that happens in 50 years that's not easy. It's just not. Look at the last 6 years at that. That's just kind of things have amounted very quickly for us to be stressful. And I see people disconnecting, which I do promote disconnection from, the outside world temporarily if you need it. But if you are hiding from the realities that there are people here trying to take advantage and manipulate the power dynamics of society as well as world global politics, then you're going to be SOL. And you're going to get stuck until you start retraining your brain to be able to take small challenges. Because I don't want to get too deep into that, and I don't want to be trying on an attack mode for anyone here. But I'm just saying the soft life it's a trick for the brain that you really need to be careful about how you put that out on your timeline. I'd want people to have ease. I want people to get away from dis-ease and disease and dis-ease from an emotional standpoint and be able to be peaceful. But that does take some dis-ease and discomfort to be able to attain peace. Now, I do think some people are naturally good at it. I look back and I thought, I've worked hard in my life. I've had to experience things that not a lot of people know of, even though I share a lot about myself, but they were at a different time that I think that's part of my purpose is this transformation was me helping others realize that, there's a lot of my friends that still have both parents left. I've spent more than half my life without a father figure. but I've also had two maternal figures. So it's like I wasn't completely alone, but that has something to do with like also feeling alone. Sometimes our external realities we don't connect with, and it doesn't fully fill our tank and make us feel worthy because we are technically missing something that we see a lot of people have. I know at one point when I wasn't as emotionally healthy, I would say, as I am, whenever my friends would be like, oh man, so mad at my dad, I don't want to talk to him, and I was like, oh my gosh, what did he do? Like, is he hit you? Or like, and I was comparing like my perception of like what a horrible father would do. It's like, no, he pissed me off. He won't give me money. And I'm like, is that what? Like, he won't give me, okay. And so because I was not emotionally, I had a leak in my self-worth system, I started judging that person because I was hurt, right? And I would generate anger that I had knew nothing about how to cope with at this point because someone else was looking at what I would consider a privileged situation to be able to have a parent that you can ask for money or ask for something for that I didn't get to do. Now, people could say like, oh yeah, well, you got life insurance. It's not like I got to spend it, which I'm grateful for because as a young person, you inherit money that you don't think long term. Your brain literally, thinking long term is training. So if we're going to talk another reason of the soft life is in being able, you're tricking your brain into being short term gratification mode. Well, actually, technically, let me rephrase that. Your brain naturally is in a short term gratification mode, but you're putting a limit on how far you can perceive how to sustain your livelihood, whether it be from a financial sense or just from like ration food, right? That's a survival skill. These people on like Naked and Afraid, they don't just naturally have survival skills. They had to learn from being out in hard circumstances to be able to build a soft life for themselves intentionally for a show, right? But it's not something that they had to train that longevity. And right now, I think, unfortunately, a lot of people are falling prey. I'm going to say, because it is a scam in a lot of ways, that social media portrays creating stability and security for ourselves by attaching ourselves to someone else. And unfortunately, you're not safe for very long from that. And I don't mean to be morbid for anyone, but I just mean to be realistic and help you. You can still enjoy the soft life married to a wealthy person, because it's not just women for men. I see wealthy women all the time. Take Madonna for a circumstance where she has a man that she wants around. Like her stability is dependent on someone being around. That's her life. If she wants it that way, she can do it. But is she ever going to be able to come away from that? Not that she would want to. I mean, she's Madonna. But as an example, those are the people that we look up to. Those are the names that we all know. Celine Dion, I would say, would be a good comparison and actually not good contrast to that, is that, she is a strong, independent woman. She lost her husband, and at this point, she dresses up and makes herself feel good from the outside in for herself. So that technically is actually an inside out way, because she's intentional about like, you know what, and she can manage that. That's the other thing, is like she's also probably close to in her 70s now. I don't know. But she is a really great representation. The problem is she's not in the limelight as much because she's drama and trauma cell. That's a little bit more boring. But I think in a state of where we are right now as a society with the mental health crisis that we're in, a lot of it has to do with just how we've all kind of adaptively attained and shaped our own goals around making us feel better from the outside in. No harm, no foul. You still got plenty of time, but teaching and aligning yourself with the values of what those things actually do to you and understanding if they are sustainable is going to be the long-term impact for future generations. So, because I don't have anything else written down, and I don't think I have anything else pressing on my brain, I'm going to cut it there. And it's only 30. I'm trying to slowly limit how much I talk at y'all, because at this point, I don't like to talk at people. I like to talk with people. And you'd be like, yo, Sarah, do a podcast. I'm working on it. I am I've made a list of people, conversations that I want to have. I'm very intentional and thoughtful about impact and making sure that they're thorough, because I'm still working on, if you tune back in from last week's talk between perfection versus progress, I've had to reel my perfection is, and like overthinking about like, okay, I want it this way, I want it done this way, did it right, and that delays me being on those podcasts. But I've been on plenty of podcasts having conversations. What I'm developing on is inviting people into the conversations of my own, to be able to extract those experiences and that inspiration for you guys to figure out how do you apply in your life. So lots of things coming for y'all. And yeah, so like I said earlier, I've got 2 photo shoots today, one of which I am channeling my father, and one of which I'm channeling a childhood memory, which I'm going to keep a surprise for y'all who follow me. Of my portfolio, I will post it again for you guys if you want to keep up with the modeling side. I try to keep my social media. There's so much I do. I was talking with Elton, who's in the comments, of like, I don't really know what to label myself. I just know I am trying to be a role model for the next generation to understand what mental health and resiliency looks like. Modeling is one avenue for me to do that, but it also keeps my life fun. It keeps my creation going. For a long time, I put a lot of my creativeness into business development. And now that I got that generally where I want it, I'm merging the two, because they kind of go hand in hand at this point. So I hope you guys have a great weekend. And yeah, I will see you. Will it be next Friday? Next Friday is the 1st. I think I can do next Friday. May 1st. We'll talk about something. We'll figure it out. But y'all have a great weekend. Peace.